To all my marketers out there, you're probably spread real thin right now. I'm sure you need some help between creating content, launching campaigns, generating leads, scoring leads, nurturing leads, and a lot more stuff with leads. You barely have a moment to breathe, let alone do your best marketing. But that's where HubSpot and Breeze, its new built-in AI, come in. When you combine the power of Marketing Hub and Content Hub, you can have your best quarter, every single time. With tools that instantly remix your content, lead scoring to shine a light on potential customers, and AI-curated analytics suite for reports and KPIs. And that's all alongside co-pilots and agents to automate all of your tasks, making your life easier, getting you the results faster, and better connecting you to all your data all in one place. Doesn't that sound nice? So stop spreading yourself so thin and start making major moves with HubSpot. You can visit HubSpot.com/marketers to learn more. All right, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, January 15th. I'm John Weigell here with Mark Dent, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. With the TikTok ban looming on January 19th, many TikTok users are checking out another Chinese social media app. Referred to as RedNote, the platform has over 300 million users and is not very English friendly. So how are new users navigating the app, and why did they choose RedNote specifically? We'll get into all that, but before we do, let's give you the hits and headlines in business and tech. Starting us up with a headline from Starbucks. Starbucks is reversing the open door policy it initiated nearly 7 years ago. The coffee chain announced that people who enter its North American stores have to actually order something before grabbing a seat or asking for the bathroom code. This is devastating to me personally, Mark, because I have gone into many Starbucks and gone to the bathroom and left.
Yeah, I mean, the Starbucks is the unofficial public restroom of America.
It is.
And that goes for double in like walkable cities like New York or Philadelphia or Washington, D.C. or something like that, where you have to go somewhere. And so it's Starbucks. Yeah, now you're going to have to buy the, $3 or $4 coffee is probably the cheapest you can get in order to do that. But that said, I guess I'm not that surprised that they've made this decision. I think it just fits with what a lot of different corporations are doing when faced with tough business decisions. Like Starbucks has not been doing well, of course. They hired a new CEO who's been trying to turn it around.
Right.
And I don't know, this just reminds me kind of like Netflix cutting back on password sharing. It's like no more freeloading, and that's essentially what Starbucks is saying here. Whether this makes a huge difference on their bottom line, I frankly would be surprised because with Netflix, it did make a huge difference, right? There were certainly a ton of people who were sharing passwords, and now there are millions more people who've got accounts. Like, I don't see that same sort of thing happening here for Starbucks.
Yeah, good call out for Netflix too, because this is kind of like a bit of a crackdown they're having. And I also don't really see how this is going to affect the bottom line too much, but I think maybe it would make employees happier that not so many people are using the restroom all day, every day.
For sure.
Next up here, Meta just sent an internal memo to its employees yesterday spelling out that the company plans to cut about 5% of its lowest performing staff. Mark Zuckerberg also noted that the company would provide, quote, generous severance to anybody let go. Mark, what do you make of this just outright saying that we're going to lay some people off?
It's kind of just the tech playbook, right? Since the pandemic, at least, or at least since the hiring spree that happened during the pandemic, going back to 2023 and last year as well, were frankly pretty big years for tech layoffs. Early 2025, we're just seeing more of it. A 5% reduction at Facebook, by the way, means around 3,600 jobs. So, this is a lot of jobs. But I do think it also just fits. Mark Zuckerberg obviously has been basically trying to make a 180 of his public image and all of his different views politically and to some degree on business things as well over the last few weeks. And I think this just kind of fits with everything that he's been doing in that regard.
Yeah, I think corporations are getting more outward about doing the layoffs and also more outward about the return to office policies. We kind of saw that from like JP Morgan Chase this week. They said by March, everybody's got to come in 5 days a week. So I think people are really kind of clamping down. A really big clamping down time in 2025 so far. Starbucks and now Meta.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing to note, though, is that as our listeners probably know, is that often when companies have layoffs, their stock price goes up, which is, extremely depressing. But in this case, so far today, at least as of about an hour ago, Meta's stock was down about 2%.
Well, From there, we go to Europe. Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, suggested a 100% property tax on UK and US buyers coming into the country. In 2023, non-residents bought about 27,000 homes and apartments in Spain, not to really live in, but as investments. Sanchez went on to say that, quote, there are too many Airbnbs and that what's lacking is really housing. And on to the banks. Capital One is being sued for, quote, cheating millions of customers by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The watchdog agency is accusing the bank of freezing interest rates for its high-interest saving accounts, not paying over $2 billion in interest to its customers. And finally, some interesting news from China to prime us for our main story. Officials in Beijing, pending a full TikTok ban in the US, of course, on the 19th, are now discussing contingency plans to sell off the platform. The new buyer name being tossed around the press and in Beijing is Elon Musk. But it won't be cheap. According to a Wedbush securities analyst, the buy could cost Elon between $40 and $50 billion if that does happen.
Well, it's a shame that he already spent $40 billion on Twitter just a couple of years ago. Otherwise, that money would be easier to come up with.
Yeah, too bad. And to continue with that thread, TikTok is also plastered all over the news these days as the ban gets closer and closer on January 19th. But another Chinese app has come out of the woodwork to dominate headlines as well. RedNote has seen an influx of users coming in from the potential sinking ship of TikTok. So, Mark, can we first talk about what RedNote is? And that's not even its real name. That's just what it's being referred to as.
Right. Yeah. RedNote, it has a real name in Mandarin that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce on this podcast, but it's a big deal there over in China. It has around 300 million users, according to Business Insider. And recently, just in the last few days, a lot of Americans have started to download the app. It's been at the top or near the top of app downloads these last couple of days. But what it is just kind of another version of TikTok, maybe a little bit closer to Instagram, throw in a little bit of Pinterest, and you get all of it kind of all in one there. So at the end of the day, it's just another place for short form video apps and a place where a lot of US people hope they can cultivate communities like they have in TikTok.
Right. You know, it's fascinating that thousands of people have moved to this app because you would think that the idea would be to move easily to Instagram or any meta platform to kind of do your posting, especially in the United States. But it seems there's some sort of defiance in this move to another Chinese app. Why do you think thousands of people have kind of pushed to log on to there?
I think it is about defiance. People who are TikTok users are not happy about the ban. Yeah. And so they're just saying like, well, we'll just move to another Chinese-owned app, which isn't spelled out specifically in the bill that's banning TikTok here. And as kind of silly as that sounds, because you would think that like a safer alternative for them would be to, migrate over to Instagram or some other maybe US-owned short-form video app that could maybe start up. Great opportunity, I suppose, starting on January 20th for one of those.
Yeah, sure.
I also think a lot of people, they're on Instagram already. TikTok is its own community where people have both accounts. And so this gives something that's both fresh and kind of forbidden. And you can kind of wag your finger in the face of the establishment, which is what a lot of people like to do.
Yeah, and that wagging the finger, as you said, put it at the top of the iPhone download chart. So it's really doing well. It's kind of a similar thing that happened with Blue Sky maybe a month ago when a lot of X users fled there. But this is obviously for a different reason. But I guess what are the effects at the end of this change with a bunch of people going over to RedNote? Is there any big thing happening because of it?
Well, as Business Insider reported, there's been kind of this fun sort of cross-pollination of culture where you have Americans going on there and a lot of what they're seeing is in Mandarin. And so it's definitely sort of a culture shock and language shock for most Americans. And you've had like a little bit of cooperation, which is kind of nice, where Chinese users are kind of explaining to Americans how to use it. On the other hand, there's been a lot of TikTok users, according to TechCrunch, who've already run into problems with the policy for RedNote. It is, of course, a Chinese-owned app, just like TikTok is. Yeah. And so there's strict rules about content. And so people have just seen their accounts be suspended or banned almost immediately for potentially vague reasons. They might have just posted something they weren't supposed to.
Sure.
There was one TikTok influencer, according to TechCrunch, who just had like TikTok watermarks on her posts, and they don't like that. So you can't do that either on RedNote.
Yeah, it seems like a different sort of beast where it's not exactly like a one-for-one TikTok clone.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a bit of its own flair. It's got a bit of differences itself. And it even offers live chat rooms as well. Kind of a la Clubhouse a little bit, where users can go in together.
Discord-ish, I guess, too, yeah.
Or Discord, where you can go in together and have a lengthy conversation. And there was one chat room that had like over 30,000 people in it at one time. So it's interesting, this interaction and cross-pollination of like Americans and Chinese content creators working together. Like there's even stories about Chinese content creators asking Americans that are new on the platform to help them with English homework. It's very funny in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and what some people have been saying about it is it reminds them of TikTok from a few years ago when it was a little bit more loose and sort of fancy free. And I suppose this honeymoon sort of phase with RedNote couldn't last, certainly for at least 5 days, until everyone kind of finds out what's really going to happen to TikTok. As we alluded to there earlier, like it could still be sold. ByteDance could still divest from it. The Supreme Court, which might make its decision about whether to uphold the ban literally any minute.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there, although most think that they'll probably uphold it as the lower courts did. So there is going to be potentially, I think, continued growth on RedNote, maybe no matter what. There's another app called Lemonade, which has also been among the top downloaded apps over the last few days. That's another sort of TikTok clone. And the really interesting thing about Lemonade is it happens to also be owned by ByteDance. So I think migrating to there, you might even have a shorter time on that app before it gets banned. It might even already fall under some of the same characteristics as the TikTok ban does in the law right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's, I think, an interesting future of this. If this ban does get pushed through, which it appears pretty likely at this point, will the government now crack down on more Chinese apps like this, like Lemonade? I mean, that's a pretty easy target because it's also owned by ByteDance and they know the situation there. Or, RedNote as well. Like, will they continue banning these apps that allegedly could harm national security?
I guess it's just sort of one of those things. They say like buy local. Maybe also you need to influence local. That's like the only way you're going to have a following that's not going to get taken away because an app gets destroyed is if you're on a US-based app.
Yeah, that seems to be the only ship that won't sink at this point, it looks like.
Yep.
All right, and that'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor is Robert Hartwig. Our executive producer is Darren Clark. We got so much more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go sign up at thehustle.co/email and follow us on Instagram at The Hustle Daily. We'll see everybody tomorrow.
Hey, everybody. I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately. It's called Nudge, hosted by Phil Agnew. It's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. So have you ever noticed how the smallest changes can have the biggest impact? On Nudge, you learn simple, evidence-based tips to help you kick bad habits, get that raise, and grow a business. Every bite-sized 20-minute show comes packed with practical advice from admired entrepreneurs and behavioral scientists alike. And Nudge is fast-paced, but still insightful with real-world examples that you can actually apply. Oh, and by the way, it's the UK's fastest-growing business podcast. I was listening to an episode recently that Phil, the host, had on Harvard professor Mike Norton, and Mike convinced Phil that he had to handwrite every single one of his emails before sending them to understand what he was really trying to talk about. This process, although it sounds insane, he claims, Phil, that it made his emails 3.5 times better. You got to listen to this podcast. It's a great way to understand how email marketing can help your business. You can listen to Nudge wherever you get your podcasts.
New year, new resolutions. And this year on the Best Idea Yet podcast, we're revealing the untold origin stories of the products you're obsessed with. And we promise you have never heard these before.
Ever wonder how the iconic Reese's peanut butter cup was invented? Because it was by accident. H.B. Reese, a former frog salesman,
true story,
stumbled upon the idea after accidentally burning a batch of peanuts.
Classic.
Proving that sometimes our best ideas arise from what seem like our biggest mistakes.
And Jack, did you know there's a scientific explanation why humans crave that surprising combo of peanut butter and chocolate?
I didn't, but it sounds delicious.
It is delicious.
So, if you're looking to get inspired and creative this year, tune in to the Best Idea Yet. You can find us on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you're looking for more podcasts to help you start this year off right, check out New Year, New Mindset on the Wondery app. Who knows? Your next great idea could be an accident that you burned. This is Nick.
And this is Jack.
And we'll see you on the best idea yet.